welcome to the Eastpack Limited annual meeting, 28th of July 2020. Welcome to the Eastpack meeting 2020. 1, 2, 3. Just doing a audio check for our streamers via YouTube. So the toilets, they are located at the top of both stairs and beside Suite 4. Additional facilities are also located on the ground floor opposite the cafe. Keep going. Smoking is prohibited inside the building. Bay Park is a designated smoking area located on the ground floor, outside the glass sliding doors at the Suite 4 end of the building. Thank you.
Roger. How are you? Oh, I'm good, thanks. It's been an interesting year. Barry, be seeing you tomorrow, I think. Probably the early one. Yeah. Yep. Hey, Bruce. Good. Likewise, yeah. Bill, how are you? Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the shareholders of Eastpack Limited to the 2020 annual meeting, which is now open. I will start with the obligatory housekeeping stuff. There are toilets located at the top of both stairwells and beside Suite 4, and additional facilities are also located on the ground floor opposite the cafe. Smoking is prohibited inside the building, as it is in most places in New Zealand. We've got a designated smoking area located on the ground floor at the Suite 4 end of the building, and if anybody wishes to smoke, could you please do it in that area only. In the event of an emergency, the evacuation alarm will sound throughout the building, and in these circumstances, please use the stairwells and make your way to the nearest assembly point. There is one located at each car park. And health and safety, if there is an emergency, there is somebody here from the facility who will look after you better than I could. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. It's great to be all here in person for this meeting. There were times during March and April when I doubted that we'd be able to assemble in this way for such a large meeting. 2020 has been a year of extraordinary change and challenge. Yet today, things feel so normal in New Zealand that COVID-19 here feels quite unreal and like it was a bad dream that didn't really happen. Unfortunately, it remains a horrible reality for much of the world, a lurking threat to New Zealand, and I think we've yet to see its full economic impacts in some of our markets and at our borders. So, an interesting time indeed. This meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting. So a number of our shareholders will be joining the meeting virtually via the Lumi app. These shareholders will be able to view the meeting online, to ask questions and vote on the resolutions online. This is the first time we've used this technology, so we trust it works well for all shareholders. This sort of technology is not just a legacy from COVID-19, it is a way for the future, so we hope it runs well today. For those of you who don't know me, I am John Lachlan, the Eastpack Chairman. I'd also like to welcome our solicitor, Bill Chapman and Richard Hoare from Sharp Tudhope, our auditor, Mark Crawford and Ben Olsen from KPMG, who are joining us via Lumi, and from our registrar, Computershare, we have Sarah McPherson, Caroline Hallaby and Elizabeth Brotherton-Ratcliffe. I confirm that the notice of meeting was sent out in accordance with the company's constitution and that a quorum of shareholders is present and therefore the meeting is properly constituted. I'll introduce the rest of our directors who are all present tonight. Donna Smith, Adrian Galt, Mike Montgomery, Dylan Barrett, Murray McBride, David Jensen and Mark Giles. I'd also like to welcome a number of staff who are present. And for good order, are there any representatives of the media here tonight? Okay, thanks. Turning now to the meeting protocols. For those who are here in the room, I ask that if you wish to speak during the meeting, that you raise your hand and wait for the microphone to be brought to you. Please begin by introducing yourself for the visitors who are online. For those who are following the meeting online, questions can be submitted at any time. To ask a question, press on the speech bubble icon as it's pictured in the slide, and this will open a new screen. At the bottom of that screen, there's a section for you to type your question, and once you finish typing, please hit the arrow to send. Please note that while you can submit questions from now on, I will not address them to the relevant time in the meeting, and please also note that your questions may be moderated, or if we receive multiple questions on one topic, they may be amalgamated together. Voting today will be conducted by way of a poll on all items of business, and in order to provide you with enough time to vote, I'll shortly open the voting for all resolutions online. The way we'll conduct the meeting is that I'll start the meeting with my report, which will be followed by the company overview by Hamish Simpson, our CEO. We'll then move to the annual meeting resolutions, including director elections. Following the resolutions, we will have a presentation from Kathy Brown on her experience as a board observer for the past year. Historically, we have not held a fully constituted annual meeting for the Eastpack Entity Trust and have voted on EET representatives as part of the Eastpack annual meeting. This year, the EET annual meeting will follow immediately after this meeting, and Paul Edkins, the chairman of EET, will chair that meeting. Turning now to apologies, we've received apologies from Peter McBride, Richard Glenn, Keith Allaway, Simon Peters, Lynette Hooton. Are there any other apologies from the floor or from shareholders online? Nothing from the floor, and I can't see anything down there, so they're done. Right, 58 shareholders have cast a postal vote or appointed proxies prior to the meeting. Of these, 14 have appointed proxy holders to attend the meeting on their behalf. As chairman of the meeting, I hold proxies from 8 shareholders representing 755,850 votes. Of these, 91,093 votes are undirected proxies. Voting today in respect of all the formal resolutions will be by way of completing the voting papers that were issued to shareholders with the notice of meeting for those attending in person, or electronically using the Lumi app. Are there any shareholders who are present who do not have voting papers? No, the system's working. Great. The voting papers will be collected and votes will be counted by the company's share registrar. You'll be asked to sign those voting papers before they are collected from you. And if any shareholders need to leave this meeting prior to the end, can you please ensure that you sign your voting papers and hand these to the representatives of Computershare as you leave. Similarly, for those voting using the Lumi app, if you need to leave the meeting, please complete your votes before leaving the meeting. The vote count will be completed following the close of the meeting. This is the first annual meeting of the company under the new constitution. The maximum number of votes for each shareholder is the lesser of the number of shares and the shareholder production. Okay, the minutes of the previous meeting. The company administrator has circulated the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 13th of May 2019. I will put the motion regarding the approval of the minutes of last year's meeting. That resolution is that the minutes of Eastpack Limited annual meeting held 13th of May 2019 be accepted as a true and correct record. Do I have a mover and seconder? Yep, Barry O'Neill and Ray Sharp. Thank you. Does any shareholder have any matters arising from those minutes that they wish to raise? No? Good, thanks. For all those in the meeting, all in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Anybody against? So all those in favour, please raise your hands. Great. Any against? Carried unanimously, except for the Loomies perhaps. Right. For those using Lumi to attend the meeting remotely, if you are eligible to vote at this meeting poll, a poll will shortly appear on your device. To cast your vote, simply select one of the options. There is no need to hit submit or enter button as this vote is automatically recorded. However, you do have the ability to change your vote up to the time I declare the poll closed. I'll pause briefly for the online attendees to finalise their vote. That was on the minutes, which I got ahead of myself on. Is there any votes there at all, Merv? No, so the motion was carried unanimously. All right, we move to the Chairman's report. Look, I'll now talk to the financial aspects of our 2019 annual report, and then Hamish Simpson will speak to the operational aspects, and I'll also address some other matters. The 2019 season saw a long, dry summer. Feels a long time ago, 2019 season, which lowered haywood yields and saw production dip from the 2018 record season. Gold volumes continued to lift. In 2020, we've again seen a dry summer, resulting in green volumes being similar to 2019, but gold volumes increasing as new hectares come into production. As per the chart, the 2020 season was a record year at 41.3 million trays packed, and we're expecting a ramp up in gold volumes to come in the next 4 years. The chart also shows that while the overall trend is trending up over the past 6 years, volumes do bounce up and down depending on what Mother Nature delivers us. And this is one of the governance challenges we face at Eastpack, in being able to make the appropriate investment decisions to cope with volumes that may arise. As a grower-owned cooperative, Eastpack owns the responsibility to pack your fruit in good order. We have to make decisions with imperfect information, and we regard investing slightly too early as a lesser evil than investing too late and failing our growers. And this reflects our company values of growers at heart. Hamish will discuss our plans to meet capacity requirements in his presentation and talk about the required investment. The decrease in the 2019 crop volume flowed directly through to company revenues, which were down 4% or 6.8 million to 170 million. Our business thrives on volumes, and when volumes are strong, our profitability is also strong, given the large number of fixed costs that are associated with having capacity available. The opposite happens when volumes are down. We have configured our business at 40 million trays, and in 2019, our volumes at 38 million trays had an impact on our net profit after tax. Our fixed costs have increased, with depreciation expense up 1.4 million and interest costs were up 0.26 million, reflecting the capital investment that's been made in recent years. Our 2019 net profit was also impacted by a fair value adjustment of 2.1 million, which was the result of a significant earthworks cost at our Washer Road site, which was billed late to us and had previously been underestimated. These costs took the cost on the site over the valuation of the property. Our Te Puke sites are primarily built on peat land, which means that extensive earthworks are required to construct high-load buildings such as cool stores and pack houses. With volumes increasing in 2020, we expect to see our net profit rebound, albeit impacted by COVID-19. With the challenge of future capital requirements, the board in 2019 thought very hard about distribution to transactor and investor shareholders. And with the decrease in profitability and then the significant uncertainties around COVID-19 and the company's cash flow. In 2017, a dividend of 7 cents per share gross was made, which was lower than the 10 cents gross the company's endeavoured to pay each year. In 2018, a dividend of 13 cents per share gross was made, bringing the average dividend paid over the 2017 and 18 years to 10 cents gross per share, in line with the company's target distribution level. In 2019, the company paid an interim dividend on investor shares of 5 cents gross per share, but this year, after considering the lower 2019 profit, the impacts of COVID-19 and the capital spend undertaken, the board made a decision not to pay a final dividend on investor shares. It was a difficult decision. We have now changed our capital structure so we will not have rebates in the future, and all distributions will be made by way of dividend. The decision on dividends for the 2020 year will need to be considered in the light of the current environment we're operating in. With these decisions, we have to balance the need to reward shareholders for the supply and use of their capital. At the same time, we need to be financial prudent in understanding the risks ahead for the business, the use and aggregation of debt, and we need to have an eye for the capital requirements for the future as our shareholders grow with the industry. As we progress through the 2020 year, the uncertainties are diminishing, but there have been many twists and turns along the way. When we think back, in January, China was seen as the problem. By March, it was the solution. And in June, it threw up new challenges in the Beijing market. My sense is that 2020 will be the year that proves the old saying, it isn't over until it's over. At the end of July, it's certainly too early to be making precise predictions, but the risk goes down with every day that's passing. So it's interesting to look at how we've been balancing the various imperatives in recent years. In 2014, the company packed 24 million Class 1 trays. Since that time, we've invested 162 million in property, plant and equipment. At the same time, our debt has increased by 48 million. Our operational performance has enabled the company to fund 114 million, or 70% of our capital expenditure, from operational cash flows. It's this capital expenditure, along with the great performance from our people, that's allowed us to handle the G3 volume in a timely fashion, improve productivity of our graders, and achieve good fruit loss performance despite a long season. In terms of our financial position, the capital expenditure has reduced our equity ratio from 51% in 2015 to 49% in 2019. That's not a huge change. However, as we will discuss later in the meeting, the future capital expenditure required by the business to meet the projected growth will continue to put pressure on the company's financial positions and on this ratio. We will need more bank funding in the future and more equity-type capital from our shareholders to ensure that the company maintains a prudent financial position. And I'll discuss that later in the meeting. It's useful to look in more detail at the 2019 result. As I noticed earlier, revenues were down 4%, reflecting the decreased volumes. As we've discussed in previous meetings, volume is both our friend and our enemy. It's volume that allows us to pay for state-of-the-art equipment that gets efficiency and great results for your fruit. It's also volume that challenges us in both directions. Too little volume causes us profitability challenges, and too much volume causes us capacity, capital expenditure and capital adequacy challenges. The EBITDA line is a really important measure. It looks like how the underlying business really traded operationally. To be 12% down at this line reflects a reduction in volumes below 40 million trays and the cost pressure with increases in labour costs, electricity, insurance. It's a credit to the management team and all the staff that when volumes have decreased, EBITDA as a percentage of revenue is down by a similar percentage to the volume reduction and well ahead of 2017 when volumes were higher. The drive to continue to look for productivity gains and deliver a good financial result remains strong. As we move down the table, the lines add back interest, depreciation, rebates, and then tax. Net profit after tax is impacted by the fair value adjustment of 2.1 million as discussed previously and increasing depreciation and interest costs. The 2018 year shows what a strong volume can do to the company's profitability. Our balance sheet shows a sound equity position which is in accordance with our plans. I've previously discussed the growth in operating assets and debt. We continue to build our equity position, but with lower profit in 2019, it's not grown as strongly as in the past 3 years. We continue to build our financial strength for the challenges posed by industry growth in the medium-term future, and I'll cover this later in the meeting when we talk about capital structure. In terms of accountability to the owners of the Eastpack Cooperative, it's useful to discuss with our shareholders how the business is financed. Our current banking arrangements have been in place for the last 5 years, but our business has grown strongly and our operations have comfortably serviced our current debt. We have a good relationship with our bank who understands our plans and has given us good medium-term support. As per the slide, we are currently well within our banking covenants. We're now looking hard at a ramp-up in volumes with an expectation that in 2023, our volumes packed will be close to 50 million trays. The challenge we have as a business that will need to build the capacity before the growth comes so that we can support our shareholders appropriately. Hamish will talk more about that. We're now working to build a syndicated banking facility with likely 3 banks where we will look to have a large increase in our banking facility. Be fair to say that the sun must be shining on the kiwi fruit industry because the bankers are there with offering umbrellas. However, we need to be careful and manage our business prudently as debt is still debt and still has to be serviced and repaid in good times and in bad times. And I'll talk a bit further about that when I come to capital structure. In terms of the 2020 season, whilst this meeting and my chairman's address is normally a review of the prior year, I'd like to talk a little bit about 2020. This annual meeting would normally have been held in May, and due to COVID-19, we pushed it back to the end of July, which gives me an opportunity to reflect on the 2020 year to date. There are no doubt many war stories out there, as there have been for Eastpack in managing through COVID-19. This year, the board have had a number of board meetings, both in person and electronically, as we've overseen management's plans in dealing with COVID-19 and also implementing the new capital structure. As a board, we would like to recognise the leadership that Hamish Simpson has shown and the efforts of the entire Eastpack team through the COVID-19 challenge to pack a record crop of 41.3 million trays. It has not been an easy challenge, from having sufficient staff, separating our people beyond the design parameters of our facilities, through working with government agencies, dealing with the Eurofins pull-out, and a crop that was significantly affected by drought conditions. And then we wanted an efficient business and still to deliver a solid bottom line. We needed lateral thinking, flexibility, agility, and to work as a collective of staff and growers to get through. For the board and for you, our shareholders, we need to be grateful and feel privileged that the government allowed us to operate and to pack your fruit. That was not a given. The initial medical advice was that the more comprehensive a lockdown could have been, then the more effective it was likely to be. The advice was that feeding New Zealanders was essential, but exporting food and beverages was not. There was significant uncertainty at the time we went into lockdown, which created anxiety and tension, but we worked through this successfully. Whilst we've worked through this successfully, our financial results will be lower than we had budgeted. The cost of agility in responding was a loss of efficiency and thus higher costs per tray handled. We still expect to deliver a solid profit, and due to the volumes packed, we expect to deliver an improved result on the 2019. And that's as close to a forecast as you'll get from me. 2021 is likely to bring even further challenges, especially the availability of workers. Of our 3,500 seasonal staff, approximately half of them are overseas workers, just under 600 RSE workers, and over 1,000 are workers on either holiday working visas or student visas. The government is assuming that New Zealand will have high unemployment, and thus business should give priority to employing Kiwis. That may or may not transpire. Our borders may or may not be open to some countries, and the management team is working hard on strategies to manage whatever circumstances we're faced with. With global economies slowing down and lower consumer confidence, demand for premium products like kiwi fruit may be down, and we may need to prepare for a possible market slowdown. So having a crop that stores well so a long sales window can be achieved will be critical for Eastpack, and for us having sufficient cool storage will be important. Management have presented to the board on these risks, and the company has a large number of initiatives in progress across a number of fronts. We are building more gold CA capacity, improving throughputs across the graders, and continuing to develop new ideas through research and development. We're getting closer to on development of our automation strategies, and we'll be looking to implement parts of this in 2021. I will discuss the implication of this investment further in the capital structure presentation coming up. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for your support and supply this year. I'd also like to thank the great work of the management team and all the staff in what was a year of rounded achievements in 2019, and as we've seen to date, a somewhat challenging 2020 with COVID-19. I'd also like to acknowledge our growers who've responded really well to the directions communicated and helped us in overcoming the challenges, I should say. Yeah. Freud is a bastard. I'll now hand over to Hamish to speak to you about operational managers.
The green button? The green button. Fantastic. Okay. So I'll do a brief run through 2019, I'll touch on 2020, but I'll spend a little bit of time just around the capital plan to give a bit of context over multiple years where we're heading in terms of capital. So to start with, 2019. This was the earliest season for 10 years. That dry, hot weather in the summer meant that fruit came on early. And for us, an average start first week is around 150,000 trays, and we packed 1.4 million in the first week. To say that we were working hard in that first week is an understatement. But we managed to get it in a tray with a lot of X and A protocols, so a lot of colour conditioning required. So quite a challenging first start for the year. It was a high dry matter year in terms of records for dry matter,
probably only beaten by this year if we'd actually managed to measure it. And that dry weather, of course, affected yields. So in the end, as John has outlined, we packed only about 38 million trays. For us, there were some key operational decisions that had financial consequences. Easter was in a bad position for us, being at the start of G3 main pack. We made the decision to work through Easter. Every day that we work a statutory is a $700,000 penalty. So it's you add on 3 days, it's a significant bill. We made the decision to up our operational performance. We worked the stats. It set us up very well for G3, and we managed to pack all of G3 with absolutely no constraints. So quite a good operational result. Hayward really, in terms of capacity, becomes a little bit of an afterthought where we have more than enough capacity to pack the fruit in front of us. So Hayward was very straightforward. Part of our capacity, and it keeps coming back very much to one of our major constraints, is manning. And the capacity was very much underpinned by full manning through that season. We've had an extensive advertising recruitment. You would have been spammed with more on buses and billboards and everywhere, but our more campaign in terms of more jobs, more fun, very upbeat campaign. We run very heavily on social media. And we got about 2 million hits on our Facebook ad for that year. But it's very much a funnel. The more you bring in at the front, the more inquiries you have, and hopefully the more job applicants you get at the end of the day. And we actually managed to achieve full manning, which really underpinned that throughput. The year was also the first year of the large-scale gold G3 trials in terms of CA. So this has been a fairly long and slightly arduous journey for us. We've been working on CA for probably about 5 years. We've had some big wins, but we've also had some pretty spectacular mistakes along the way. But every post was a bit of a winning post in terms of working out what works best and what to stop doing. And as a result of sort of trialling for a couple of years prior, we thought we had a successful recipe. This was the first year that we scaled it to about 200,000 trays, and we had an excellent result. The packouts was good, the storage was good, and really a whole lot of ticks in the box on about 10 different factors that we needed to make the recipe a success. So Gold CA worked well for us, and to top it off, at the end of the year, we entered in the Westpack Tauranga Business Awards. And we won 4 categories: manufacturing excellence, health and safety, business innovation, and we took out the Supreme Award at the end of the night. In terms of health and safety, 2019 again was a bit of a step forward. Continued reduction in injuries across the business. TRIFR, which I think it's the total recordable injury frequency rate, which means nothing for anyone that's sort of outside the health and safety field. But we hit 14.6 at the end of 2019, compared to 25 in 18 and circa sort of 47 about 3 years before. I've been part of a sort of overall industry business health and safety forum. Generally expected best practice as comparative for manual handling industries is in the 30s. So if you're hitting about half that number, you're doing okay. The real plank for the low number in TRIFR is really around, we call it early pain and discomfort, but basically you've got a whole lot of people arriving in your business that may or may not be fit, may or may not be skilled, and you're asking them to stand on their feet for 10 hours a day packing fruit or lifting boxes. So being sensitive to early indications of any pain or discomfort and acting on that really, really fast before it turns into an injury is actually just at the real underpinning of our culture. It's part of our caring values, but it's also a really good way to operate where actually people are your engine, and they may or may not be ready for the physical work that we put in front of them. That whole philosophy we've now very much circulated amongst industry. We think it's a good thing. And we submitted that as part of the Tauranga Business Awards. We won that award. And we also received the Zespri Momentum Award for Health and Safety early 2020. In terms of ACC, we retained tertiary status, which is the sort of top level in terms of ACC certification. And we're one of only about 130 companies that are in New Zealand that have that. Recently, we got a full audit of our orchard management, and we also got that confirmed as tertiary status. To our knowledge, we're the only horticultural company in New Zealand that has tertiary status for any form of orchard production. So it's a high bar, and as part of that, we actually are responsible and pay the bill for all the accidents that happen on our site. So there is definitely a big penalty if we get it wrong. And we actually manage all the rehabilitation in our business. So we pay and we rehabilitate, obviously try and prevent people from getting injured in the first place, but we actually manage their return to work as well. So based on your premiums, depending on how well you do in that system, we save around $100,000 to $200,000 a year in terms of ACC costs. 2020. As John has said, it's been an interesting start to the year. We packed a record crop, 41.3 million trays. It was challenging in terms of fruit quality, mainly cosmetic defects. I remember sitting around with us as a team as the wind blew hard in December thinking, oh no, this could be a problem, particularly for G3, and sure enough it delivered with high percentages of blemish through a lot of the orchards. The drought obviously affected particularly Hayward. We had a lot of lines with undersize, and those high temperatures meant that we had a lot of insect pressure. There were very few that escaped sooty mould in terms of a major issue on orchard and on the graders when it arrived. So some quality challenges, and of course COVID to top it all off. So for us, we got a few days notice, not many, and then level 4, the gate went down, and we needed to change our operations significantly within around 2 days. So to understand the business and the 2 metre rule, there's no part of our business that works well under a 2 metre rule. So the way people arrive on our site, the way they scan in, the way they wash their hands, the way they go onto the grader, the way they have lunch, the way we socialise, the way we work as teams, nothing is compliant within 2 metres. So we had to become compliant in a very short amount of time. Operationally, the biggest constraint is all the drops where we pack out fruit on our graders are all spaced under 2 metres. So to be compliant, we needed to shut our grader in half, which was a significant hit to capacity. We made a few judgments to keep our capacity up, and I'll come back to that, but realistically, we needed to get new operating systems in place. We needed to negotiate that with MPI. And one of the key wins that we got, the MPI, who were actually very supportive of us as an industry, was with a physical barrier, we could work inside 1 metre, and that made all the difference. So we put in a lot of screens, and that got us up to 90% and got the show on the road. Of course, we had the withdrawal of Eurofins to spice it up a little, which required our lab to double its size within a week. And our computer systems were Eurofins computer systems, and we needed to sweep those out as well and have an entirely new operating system within a week. So with all this going on, obviously a lot of uncertainty amongst our growers. We didn't know whether the fruit was going to get picked, packed or sold in that early time. So our focus as a business was around really clear communication with our growers. The good and the bad, so everyone knew where we were heading. Consistent packing performance, that was probably the most vital thing. If people could see that we were mowing the fruit down in good order, getting good run rates, that inspired confidence that we knew what we were doing. A very clear run order, so no leapfrogging. If you had a mature fruit, you had to wait. And that gave confidence to everyone else in the queue that we were going to get to them in good order and in the right run order. And that allowed everyone to stick to the plan, which, growers, considering all the uncertainty, in the vast majority, people were calm and measured and allowed us and supported us to do our job. Interesting enough, looking back with all those constraints, in the G3 period, we actually packed 3.5 million more trays in the same time as the year before. I might say that a whole lot of fine days with only 3 rain days in the entire harvest season also helped us quite a lot there, but it was a great result. Hayward again went really smoothly. We're at level 2. We could sort of unplug some of those capacity constraints, and Hayward went really smoothly. If I look right now, inventory's in really good condition. You'll always get a problem line. Generally, the really problem lines at packing time generally come back to visit you again at repack time. But generally speaking, I can say the inventory's in good condition. And the real tick in the box this year, G3CA. So we scaled this year. We did a whole lot of engineering. We scaled to 900,000 trays, and it has been really successful. High class 1 pack outs. Good storage ability. It's storing really, really well. And so commercially it's worked very well for the growers, and from an inventory point of view, it's also a really big tick in the box. So we're very, very pleased that this has been a win. The trade-offs, coming back to the trade-offs, so increasing that throughput to gain confidence while we're getting ourselves organised and compliant, it meant that we needed to pack a lot of bulk boxes. And bulk boxes, instead of single layer trays, you can get a lot more output per person. We can keep the run rate up. There was a significant financial impact in that. We're incentivised to pack single layer trays. So we took a $6 million revenue reduction to keep that throughput up. You get some of it back. The packaging is cheaper, so we got $3 million out of that, $6 million back. But the rest you generally save in terms of labour costs. But because we were so constrained anyway, we couldn't get the labour back. So effectively, the net hit was around $3 million, plus about $1 million in terms of additional costs around COVID and building all those screens and all the other carry-ons. So it wasn't without cost. I think the result we're pretty pleased with, but there was a significant penalty along the way. Okay, so the timing of this AGM allows us to take a bit of a multi-year view. We're reporting on 2019, but we've already finished our packing for 2020, and we've actually confirmed our capital plans for 2021. So it's sort of a multi-year spread. So I thought I'd just sort of mix up the capital presentation a little bit more to kind of talk about some of the major issues we've got, but also how we're addressing it over multiple years. So if I just look at a few of the challenges, increased costs, electricity is going up significantly, insurances and labour costs. 3 major drivers in our business, all rising fairly strongly. Labour availability, as John has talked about, is going to be a significant challenge. It has been for the last couple of years. It will get very acute in 2021. My personal view is the border will remain closed to any holiday visa or backpackers in March of next year. And of course, we have a quality problem. No business would turn down exponential growth, but it is there nonetheless, and a rapid increase in volume of G3. We've been predicting this for a long while, and we've forecast roughly 40 million trays for the last 3 years, plus or minus 1 million trays, depending on what Mother Nature gives us. But there's always been the ramp coming on, and next year is the start. So we go 44, 47, 50, and the year after that's around 52. So it's just a consistent lift of 2 to 3 million trays a year for the next 3 years. So a significant challenge in terms of the capacity of the business. So if I just break that up a little bit in terms of those costs, electricity costs rising significantly. It's one of the major costs in our business. How do we manage that through capital? So there's a first principle with electricity. If you're not measuring it, you can't manage it. So a lot of capital spent in actually putting meters everywhere. So we can measure individual cool stores what we're using in energy. As soon as you get that measurement, you actually start to form a plan. You know where you're losing a lot of energy and you have something to do about it. So a lot of plans form from that. So reduction of energy through ceiling systems. So we're talking rapid doors, curtains. We're just blocking it off from the warm outside world. That requires quite a lot of capital. Change in lighting. All our lighting is almost all LED now. So we use a lot more energy and the paybacks on those are very, very quick. Much smarter use of refrigeration. We talk about having a much better cool chain, but all that power, all that grunt actually is a whole lot more energy. So you have to be very smart about when you use it and when you don't. Much more efficient plant. The new refrigeration plant we have in is probably at least twofold more efficient than some of our older infrastructure. We've invested in a lot of control and reporting systems in terms of understanding as senior management where we're on and off track. And if you just add up the dollars and cents, we're saving about $1 million annually in terms of electricity. Not without some investment, but a very strong payback in terms of cost saving. Insurance costs. A spate of cool store fires in Australia has meant that cool store costs have gone up significantly in terms of insurance, as insurance companies have lost their appetite for traditional cool stores made of expanded polystyrene, which is basically a fuel source in an aluminium sandwich. And when a fire starts, the fire team stand back and watch it burn. And there is insurance companies have taken a much more negative stance to that, and as a result, they're reducing the amount in a monetary sense they're prepared to cover, which is a problem on big sites, and they've significantly increased the premium. So 2019 alone, our premium went up by $1.4 million, okay, due to just this problem. So again, a bit of a crossover with costs, but changing lighting to low heat emitters. So G3 dust is an amazing substance. It gets into a high heat light source, and we've had exploding lights through our pack house as a result of dust. So we've got rid of the problem. G3 is actually a pernicious dust that it's much more flammable than green dust. And if you concentrate it enough, it's actually explosive. So it's highly flammable, and we've very much been focused, spending a lot of money getting dust out of places where we don't want it to be and reducing fire risk. Plant rooms in an engineering sense are our biggest fire source in terms of cool stores, and there's now gas suppression. If there's a fire, literally it's flushed with gas and it puts the fire out. All our new cool store constructions are fire resistant panel, which is an additional cost, but much safer. And the big move for us in terms of pulling that premium down is actually sprinklering. So now we have to sprinkler all our sites to get the coverage and the low premiums. The capital cost for a large site like Quarry Road that we've almost finished this year, it's around a $2.5 million cost to sprinkler that site alone. So across 6 sites, you can imagine the total capital cost. And we need to do that steadily over the next wee while. Minimum wage costs. So this is a big one for us. Minimum wage rising by about 7% a year. Labour availability is a crossover onto this as well. So bluntly speaking, if your people are costing more, your only 2 options is to use less people or increase the throughput per person employed. And that's been a big focus for us over the last 2 or 3 years. So really it's around understanding the constraints on your grader, where they are, freeing those up in order to continue to get your throughput up. It could be your infeeds. We've spent a lot of money upgrading our infeeds, our packing systems. Even the way our packaging flows through our sites actually uses a lot of people. And so we've been spending a lot of capital and also management processes to just squeeze more and more out of what we've got. We've got much better line control systems. So our whole control systems, how we manage the line, have been changed and upgraded. We use a lot of business intelligence tools now to understand throughputs on our grader by the hour, by the week, by the day. And now we've put camera grading on all our lines. So 2019 was the last year that we needed to finish that journey, and of course you need a lot less graders, and you can keep your throughput up on your graders. So if you sort of sum that all up and you timestamp it today, in the last 3 years on those existing graders, that's not any new ones, we've achieved a 35% increase in throughput. So that required quite a lot of capital, but at the end of the day, we've got a machine that just runs so much harder with the same infrastructure. Of course, back to the use less people, and the next logical step is automation. And we've been spending a lot of time trialling automation. It's challenging. There are a lot of areas where we are still trying to basically achieve some world firsts, and we're also partnering with a number of other companies that are trying to achieve the same. The first scaling of some of that automation will be in 2021, and it'll be a rollout in Washer Road. Obviously, there's a whole lot of non-capital items around labour, and I'll not talk to that today, but you can imagine we have quite a few plans in place around what we do with reduced labour force next year, which I think will be upon us. In terms of rapid increase in G3, so the last challenge I put up, again, there's a bit of an overlap on cost reduction because throughput is everything when you've got more fruit to pack in the same period of time. So that 35% increase in throughput, obviously a key win. For us, it's also eliminating constraints. So we spent some capital on a specialist NIR grader in Collins Lane. A low drymatic year, some of our big graders get slowed down with NIR. So we've moved it to a new separate grader. And we're starting that next sort of stage of how do we squeeze more out of our existing graders with automation. So Washer Road is the first one, the 14-lane grader. We need 170 people per shift to run that grader. Even so, people are our constraint. So by automating a good part of that, we're getting probably a 35% capacity increase. Because ultimately, even if we pack bulk, it's spitting out over 2 boxes a second. There is no way people will be able to handle that degree of volume. So that's the first step down the automation track. We've got also replacing some of our oldest graders in the pipeline for 2022. And it's a bit of a parts bin because those parts fit other graders along the group. So there's a strong trickle down, which will add a lot of significant capacity in 2022. In terms of cool storage, every 1 million trays of growth we get, we need 500,000 trays of cool storage. So that's just a complete roll-on in terms of building program that we must do every year. So we had Quarry Road, the 5 High cool store, 1.2 million trays. That really came online this year. And then Collins Lane, 1 million tray fully automated cool store that's being commissioned, unfortunately due to COVID. We lost a few months there in the middle, but end of August we should be right. But it's fully automated, so it ticks a few boxes. Less labour required because you don't need forklifts in there. Very thermally efficient because you're not opening and closing doors all the time. Very efficient refrigeration. So it ticks a whole lot of boxes both in terms of cost as well as storage. And lastly, controlled atmospheres. So we had that proof of concept with 200,000 trays in 2019. We had the scaling this year of 900,000 trays. And next year is the big rollout. So Apotiki gets converted almost completely to CA. Edgecombe is fully converted over to G3 CA and the balance of Quarry Road. That'll give us around 3.2 million trays of capacity. And when you have issues coming forward, potentially labour issues, your ability to store effectively and well and spread that over a longer packing period is a key plank for us for 2021. The reality is, compared to Hayward CA, the only thing left is the white box, and even that we're changing. So refrigeration, control, humidity, the way we control the gas mix, the way we load it, the whole logistics around it are completely different. So it is a significant capital investment. And between that first step into automation and the rollout of the CA, our plan is for around about 35 million of capital expenditure in 2021. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Hamish. I thought that address highlighted what a well-rounded performance we've had from the management team, and how we're looking at the future and trying to get ahead of the curve as we and respond well to the challenges to give good outcomes for our growers. So let's now turn to the resolutions, and the first of those is director elections. The Constitution requires that in each year 1/3 of the shareholder directors must retire by rotation, and this now brings me to Resolution 1. This year the two directors retiring by rotation are Adrian Galt and Michael Montgomery. Adrian is retiring from the board in 2020. He joined the board in 2009 and has made a long and strong contribution to the board during his tenure. Adrian's been a true champion of growers and of the cooperative. He lives and breathes growers at heart, and he passionately advocates for fairness and performance. We'd like to acknowledge Adrian's service to our industry, to our company, and to thank him for his dedication and contribution over the last 11 years at Eastpack. Adrian, Eastpack is much better because you were here. Michael Montgomery has offered himself for re-election, so there are two positions to be filled. One other nomination for directorship has been received for Nairi Scott. Therefore, there are two standing with two positions to fill. The process for the election of directors at the annual meeting can run as follows. The votes for and against each candidate are counted. Any candidate who has more votes against than for is removed from consideration. As we have two open positions and two candidates standing, if both candidates receive more votes for than against, then they will be elected. I'd like to now provide an opportunity to each candidate to present to the floor. Mike Montgomery, you're up first.
Right, welcome and good evening to my fellow shareholders. The intention of this short speech is to introduce myself to those who don't know me and to convince anyone present who has not yet decided how to vote to put a tick beside my name, given I am standing for re-election unopposed. So my name is Michael Montgomery, and I've been involved in the industry for 39 years now as a grower and a post-harvest operator, and for the last 20 years as a director of Eastpack. So yes, that's a long time now, but I would consider this a strength. I'd just like to pause there for a second and acknowledge all the rest of you that have been in the industry for 39 years or longer. There is quite a few of you in the room and at the board table, so well done you all for sticking with it. We're in a great place, nearly. Right, back to where I was heading. So I'm seeking re-election for several reasons. Myself and my family remain involved in the industry, starting from 4 hectares of Hayward growing with a small pack house back in 1981. As an industry over the last 39 years, we've endured several industry downturns and shocks, and through these we have grown, as has Eastpack. Through these we learn valuable lessons, and whilst each is different in some way, the experience we gain is valuable, even though we feel extremely bruised at the time. My experience being involved in the post-harvest industry is strong. I have a strong understanding of the environment we operate in with regard to our relationship with Zespri. I'm well connected to the onshore supply chain through my chairmanship of TKL. This is the industry-owned organisation that takes our fruit from the pack house and puts it onto the ships to market. This experience in the above assists me to contribute well at the board table. I still remain a hands-on grower at orchard level, and therefore I'm well informed and have a strong understanding of the issues that affect both green and gold growers. I'm really grateful for the support over the last 20 years and look forward to your support in the future. So thank you for your attendance at Eastpack's AGM this evening.
Thanks, Mike. I'll now invite Nairi Scott to address the meeting.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Horticulture, agriculture and property create the arena in which I love to work. The horticultural sector is vital to the New Zealand economy, and this has been highlighted over the last few months as we've seen the negative impact of COVID across other sectors. Again, this sector has shown its resilience, ability to adapt, and competency in the face of a challenge. Excellent management, strong governance, demand for quality fruit, and a single desk marketing structure have contributed to the success of Eastpack and the kiwi fruit industry at large. I'm a strong supporter of the single desk marketing system that allows Zespri, on growers' behalf, to maximise the return back to growers. Although we can look back and celebrate the success of yesterday, we must not ever get complacent. So instead, we must stay vigilant and focused on the issues and the challenges that lay ahead. The significant growth trajectory dominated by the future development of SunGold is already and will continue to put significant pressure on the post-harvest capacity and capital, as well as resourcing challenges in terms of human capability, IT, processes and systems. Automation may well be part of the solution, but like all investment decisions, it needs to be tested in terms of providing an acceptable return on capital. Finding the right balance between increased investment and appropriate level of indebtedness is an important task of the board, as they must also ensure that the company remains agile and resilient. When it comes to production and financial performance, there's always room for improvement. So Eastpack must remain focused on being competitive and on maximising orchard gate return to their growers. Given an understanding of many of the key issues facing the company today, I can bring a strategic approach towards achieving the vision of tomorrow. Having operated at a senior level of a large-scale organisation, I bring experience in critical thinking, raising capital, debating large investment decisions, financial reporting and risk management. Hopefully I'll bring a fresh perspective and a good dose of old-fashioned common sense to the Eastpack board as they approach another new and exciting season. Therefore, I'd like to seek your support in the selection today. Thank you.
Thanks, Nairi. Now for the resolution. Could I please have a mover and seconder for this resolution? Mover? Yeah, thanks. Linda? Yeah. And Adrian, thanks. So the resolution is that Michael Montgomery, who retires by rotation and is eligible for re-election, be re-elected as a director of the company, and that Nairi Scott be elected as a director of the company. Is there any discussion in respect of resolution 1? If there's no discussion, I'll now ask you to please mark your voting papers to vote on resolution 1, and those of you online to vote accordingly via the Lumi app. So I'll give you a moment or two to do that. So we'll now move on to resolution 2, move. Resolution 2 is that the annual report, including the audited financial statements of the company for the year ended 31 December 2019, be received. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Move. Yep, Ray Sharp and Kathy Brown. Is there any discussion? Okay, if there's none, could you please all mark your voting papers to vote on resolution 2 and those online to vote accordingly via the Lumi app. So I'll give you a minute to do that. All right, we'll go to resolution 3. In 2019, the company changed its auditor to KPMG. This resolution seeks the meeting to record the reappointment of KPMG for the current year. The Companies Act also allows shareholders to delegate to the board the authority to fix the auditor's remuneration for the coming years. This provision allows the board the ability to add areas of special focus to the requirements of the audit program for the coming financial year. I'd now ask for a mover and a seconder for Resolution 3. Do we have a mover? Yep, thanks Mark Erickson, and seconder David Jensen. So the resolution is that the meeting record the reappointment of KPMG as the auditor of the company for the current financial year ending 31 December 2020 and pursuant to section 207 of the Companies Act and authorise the board to fix KPMG's remuneration. Could you please mark your voting papers to vote on Resolution 3 and those of you online to vote according to via the Lumi app. I'll get you to do all that, please. Right, thank you. Please hold on to your voting papers. That we will collect these after the EET resolutions. It's now time to give an update on our capital structure. Firstly, I'd like to thank our shareholders who voted overwhelmingly in favour of the change to the capital structure at the special shareholders meeting in February of this year, before COVID. It soon seems a long time ago. Of all our shareholders, we only had 3 shareholders vote against the resolutions, with over 97.8% of shares voting for each resolution. We now have 105.8 million new ordinary shares on issue, with 3.3 million shares being unpaid under the instalment scheme. Overall, we issued 5.6 million new shares, which was a pleasing result. At the time of the meeting, we are yet to have any trades in the new shares, and we do expect that there will be limited trading. Essentially, growers are making a commitment to a relationship with Eastpack to support us and to ensure that they have space to pack their fruit. So it's not really an investment that you'd expect to have traded a lot. The shares have been listed on ShareMart, which is a trading platform run by Computershare, our share registrar. If you wish to trade shares, details are on the Eastpack website. We've had quite a few questions from shareholders on dividend dates, and we do not have a specific dividend policy at this time, but the intention is to look to pay an interim dividend in September and a final dividend in March each year. With the impacts and possible impacts of COVID-19 and the associated reduced profitability and cash flow impact, plus the requirement to service a larger crop in 2021, the board will need to consider whether it's appropriate to pay a dividend in 2020, but will advise shareholders accordingly around the dividend payment dates. Importantly, I am not softening you up for no dividend. I just do not have the clarity at this time to ultimately judge what will be sensible. It's been a strange year and it's not over yet. The company has advised it's currently putting together a proposal for the implementation of preference shares or subordinated debt. We're considering other options as well. At the same time, we're progressing the implementation of a syndicated banking facility with our banker. While the bankers have initially indicated they could fund all our cash flow requirements, the board needs to consider what is in the best interests of the company. I'll go back to my old saying about bankers and umbrellas, and having the umbrellas taken away when it rains, and we forget that at our peril. The message from prudence and from our banking covenants is that some of the future capital expenditure needs to be financed by equity as well as debt. So while preference shares or subordinated debt may be an expensive form of capital, they provide the company with a stronger balance sheet and thus more financial resilience in tougher times. We are looking to have a new banking facility in place by the end of September and a possible preference share or other debt structure in place by the end of the financial year. We are looking to move quickly to our new financial structure that has been enabled by the changes made earlier this year. I'll now ask, and the capital structure is really important in allowing us to have the right physical infrastructure. So it's a real enabler of being able to support the crop well. I'll now ask Cathy Brown to give a brief report to shareholders on her year as a board observer at Eastpack. Cathy.
Good evening, everyone. For those that don't know you, I'm Kathy Brown, and I spent the last year as the board observer. So I was the second board observer, Dylan being the first. We grow kiwi fruit in Timatai Road, and we're also involved in other agricultural businesses. What a great year to have had the opportunity of sitting at the board as a board observer. There was plenty of learning, with both capital restructure and COVID-19 on the agenda. A huge thanks to the board and the management for all the insights and learning. The program is a look into the role of governance and the way a board operates. I've had to figure out plenty of acronyms and spent the first month thinking LOP was Lean Operating Procedures, but now I know it's loadout priority. This demonstrates that governance is not about knowing everything, but having the ability to ask questions. I went through a thorough induction program and spent time with senior leadership team. I traveled around to most of the sites to understand what was unique about each. This has helped me understand the company and the tremendous effort that staff put into maximizing a grower's return. This also demonstrates the value the board places in growing future leaders. I observed the Audit and Risk Committee and the Due Diligence Committee. The later remind me why I never want to be a lawyer. It has been a year where the board has had the work of the capital structure, so I've been exposed to valuations, constitutional change, and future scenario planning. I've had the opportunity to hear presentations from senior staff and outside advisors. I was fortunate enough to attend a 2-day governance course for cooperatives in Wellington, where you heard others also had capital structure on their radar. This was valuable as it included non-agricultural cooperatives, which provides a good place to reflect on the practices of agricultural governance. I've been able to attend the EET meetings and heard various other growers' perspective on company matters. Thank you, Paul, for inviting me along. The best part for me was the one-on-one mentoring sessions. You got to spend time with each individual director. These sessions gave you various aspects of Eastpack, and the kiwi fruit industry are valuable. It allows you to piece together many parts of the puzzle. Topics like kiwi fruit regulation, the role of cooperatives, IT governance, just to name a few. A huge thanks to John and all the directors for your time and answering all my questions. This role is a fabulous opportunity to gain experience in governance, and I would highly recommend it to any of the many future leaders of our industry and our cooperative. Not only does it give you insight to the complexities of Eastpack business, but it encourages you to stop and think about the future of this industry. I have already been applying many of my learnings to my other governance roles. And I would like to thank also the shareholders for supporting this role. I would also like to congratulate, probably I can't because it hasn't been announced.
You can't.
Yeah, I can't. So I will congratulate the next board observer, but I'll have to do that afterwards. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. That was a great address, and I think it highlights what we're trying to achieve with the board observer role. We are very conscious that the kiwi fruit industry has made enormous progress by having great leaders. We want to do our bit by creating tomorrow's leaders, and so we've gone to a lot of trouble with that particular scheme. Earlier this year, late last year, we called for nominations for the board observer, and we had 4 excellent candidates, and I'm pleased to now announce that we have actually appointed 2. One for the first year, and the quality of the candidates was so good we appointed a second one for next year in the same round. So Mark Erickson will join the role with a 1-year term from the start of this month, and he attended his first board meeting today. And Nick Wolseley will take over from the 1st of July 2021. So we've filled the role for 2 years, and so we don't envisage calling for nominations until early 2022. We did also get 2 other applicants who showed enormous potential, And out of the process, we gave them some advice on the things that they could do in other ways to build their capability and credentials. So, people who want to put their hands up and join in the process, even if you're not successful, you'll get something back and hopefully will help you in your personal development. So we do regard it as a really important part of the future, creating the future for this industry. Okay. So the next thing is the Director Remuneration Committee. The Director Remuneration Committee met in February to make its annual recommendation to this meeting. That was in those good old days before the potential impacts of COVID-19 were becoming apparent. The committee sought advice from Strategic Pay, and based on that advice, it prepared a recommendation that was to be put to this meeting. And the recommendation is set out on the screen. It was that the fees for each of the directors should be increased from $50,000 per annum to $52,500 per annum. That the chairman's fee should be increased from $112,500 to $130,000 per annum, being 2.4 times the standard director's fees. That the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee should receive a fee of $10,000 per annum, and the chairs of the board committee should receive $5,000 per annum. In addition, that they recommended a special one-off additional payment to the chairman in recognition of the time and effort and guidance during the capital restructure, and that would have required an increase in the total annual pool of fees to be directors to be increased to $552,500 for the 12 months ending June 2021 to give effect to these recommendations. The Directors' Remuneration Committee did a lot of work and put a lot of thought into that, and they based their recommendations, as I said before, on professional advice from Strategic Pay, and they applied their judgment of board practices in the New Zealand market, having particular regard to primary sector cooperatives. They also thought about the following factors: the importance of attracting high quality future grower and independent directors, and the opportunity cost for grower directors of taking time out of their own businesses to serve the collective interests of Eastpack growers. They also thought about the increase in directors' obligations and liabilities, particularly in the areas of health and safety and emerging in climate change. They recognised the market practice of recognising the increased workload and responsibilities taken on by chairs of board committees, and they recognised the extent of shareholder communications and liaison responsibilities for chairs in the New Zealand primary sector cooperatives and the time and effort that was put into the capital restructure. The board respected these recommendations and the logic behind them at the time they were made. Since that time, the company has suffered a reduction in planned profitability, largely as a result of COVID-19. The board also determined not to pay a final dividend in respect of the 2019 trading to our invested shareholders at the time, and at the moment we cannot give clarity on dividend prospects in respect of 2020. Thus, the board has determined that no resolution to increase directors' fees should be put to this meeting. Rather, the matter should be considered again in 2021, and hopefully things were better and clearer at that time. So that was the background to that. My view, companies that reduce their dividends do not increase their directors' fees. But that was unknown at the time the recommendations were made, and I think the logic of those recommendations stands, and that's why I went to the trouble of reading them out and explaining the logic. So here's hoping for 2021 to be a bit different to 2020. It's now general business, and that's the opportunity for shareholders to raise any matter that may be of interest to the collective body of shareholders. Is there any general business that any shareholder would like to raise? You've been remarkably quiet. I won't press you. You can have a word over a beer tonight. So thank you very much. I'll declare the Eastpack annual meeting closed and move to the EET meeting, and I'll now hand over to Paul Edkins, the chairman of EET. Paul, the floor's yours. You need the clicker? I'm just going to run the clicker.
Thank you, John. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I declare the annual meeting of the Eastpack Entity Trust as open. For those who don't know me, I'm Paul Edkins, the chairman of the Eastpack Entity Trust Forum. Now, before we begin the formal part of the meeting, I'd just like to take a few moments, and some of it's already been mentioned, but just to reflect on the unique harvest season we have had. Particularly, I would like to thank Hamish and the whole Eastpack team for the manner in which they operated and kept us all informed throughout an unprecedented time. From my perspective, I was very impressed with the way they quickly, yet calmly, adapted to everything that was thrown at them. And from what I heard, Eastpack led the way at implementing safe COVID workplace practices. The team handled what to us looked like a potential disaster in late March. They stuck to their guns to ensure fruit was only accepted into inventory in optimal condition, and then even managed one of the cleanest finishes to a harvest season. So Hamish and the whole Eastpack team, on behalf of growers, thank you. And as the sign says at Collins Lane, another successful season. Great work, team. Right, so we have a reasonably short agenda where I'll go through the normal formalities and then provide a short report on EET activities. So the apologies for this meeting are the same that were received per the Eastpack annual meeting, and the Secretary will record these accordingly, along with any other apologies from the floor and shareholders online. Similarly, with proxies, we are utilising the proxies identified in the Eastpack annual meeting. This EET annual meeting has been convened for the first time. In 2019, the Forum completed a review of the EET trust deed and associated documents. In that review, it was agreed that an annual meeting of EET should be held to be in line with the intent of the trust deed. Given this is our first meeting of this type, it is timely to remind you, our beneficiaries, what EET is here for and what the Forum is responsible for. Eastpack Entity Trust has been set up to maintain grower funds in a separate legal entity and therefore protect grower funds from any adverse outcome that affects Eastpack as a company. Therefore, all monies for sale of fruit from Zespri are paid directly to EET, and from these funds, EET pays Eastpack for the services provided to growers, packing charges, etc. The trustees of EET are the directors of Eastpack, and 2 Eastpack directors are appointed to be trustee representatives at the EET Forum. I will now talk to the operational aspects of the Forum and look in review from the start of 2019 to today. The Forum met formally 5 times over the 2019 calendar year and has had 2 meetings to date in 2020, with another meeting scheduled for tomorrow. We also had a number of email consultations between Forum members and will hold teleconference calls on urgent matters as required. The Forum meetings have a number of standing agenda items depending on the time of the year. The agenda items include reviewing the financial performance, updates from NZKGI, ISG and IAC, operational reports from Eastpack on business and fruit performance. We received presentations from Zespri on relevant matters and market updates. And then matters of relevance to Eastpack growers, including pool rules as an example. We also review Zespri pool changes and put a position forward to Zespri, IAC, and NZKGI. In 2019, the Forum considered a number of matters. As mentioned, we did a review and there's changes to the trust deed. We reviewed and approved adjustments to cash flow timing on cool storage payments so that cash flow would be more equitable between Mainpack and Kiwi Start growers. We also reviewed and approved adjustments to CA sub-pooling policies. To date, in 2020, whilst there would normally be 1 pre-packing season meeting, the Forum have had a further meeting and numerous email communications with COVID-19 and the implications with removal of taste. A special online meeting via Microsoft Teams was held in June to obtain the Forum's position. In the balance of 2020, the Forum will be looking at pool rules and have formed a subcommittee to review the way the Forum operates to identify any areas of improvement. With the challenge of the current environment, there will no doubt be plenty of issues that the Forum will be reviewing over the coming year. I would like to remind you, our Eastpack growers, that we are here to represent you and therefore encourage you to talk to your EET representative if you have issues that need to be addressed. I would like to thank the current grower representatives on Eastpack Entity Trust for their service to all growers. I would also like to thank the candidates for making themselves available to serve our growers. We now come to the formal resolutions. The EET Forum comprises 15 members to be elected by Eastpack growers, and the Forum can appoint a further 3 additional members to fill any deficiencies in representation in fruit variety, skills or regions. There are 4 wards: Bay of Plenty, Northland, Waikato and the East, which includes Hawke's Bay and the East Coast. Can I please ask Forum advisors who are standing for election to stand as their name is called? In Ward 1, it's a Bay of Plenty, which includes Waihi, Katikati, Te Puke, Tauranga, Edgecombe, Apotiki and Coromandel. In Bay of Plenty Ward, there are 12 seats, of which 6 are up for re-election and 1 has been vacant. Roger Hobers is now an Eastpack staff member and will therefore retire. This leaves a total of 7 vacancies. The following 5 advisors are restanding: Brett Watton, John Gibson, Ricky James, Seth Pardo, and myself, Paul Edkins. John Burke was appointed by the Forum in 2018 and he is now seeking formal election. John's here somewhere. There he is. Andrew Dunstan is also standing for election. Ward 2, which is North, in North Ward, there is one seat, and that is up for re-election. Mike Crum is standing for re-election. Ward 3, which is Waikato, there is 1 seat and that's up for re-election. Steve Trebilco is standing for re-election. Don't think Steve's here. And then Ward 4, which is Hawke's Bay, Poverty Bay, East Coast. In that ward, there is 1 seat currently filled by John Evans, who is not up for re-election until the 2021 annual meeting. Can I please have a mover and seconder for the following resolution? That the shareholders affirm the appointment of the following EET Forum members: John Burke, Andrew Dunstan, John Gibson, Ricky James, Seth Pardo, Brett Watton, Paul Edkins for Bay of Plenty, Ward 1, Mike Crum for North, Ward 2, and Steve Trebilco for Waikato, Ward 3. Thank you, Barry O'Neill, Steve Bassett. Is there any discussion on Resolution 1? I will now ask shareholders to mark their voting papers to vote on Resolution 1 and those online to vote accordingly in the Lumi app. We'll move on to Resolution 2. The EET financial report is available on the Eastpack website. The accounts reflect the flow-through nature of the trust, with all net funds flowing into the trust being paid out to growers. There will always be small differences after distributions, and in the 2019 year, we ended the year $2,900 over-distributed versus the prior year being $778 under-distributed. This is due to the timing of final sundry payments within the trust. The accounts are audited annually. The annual report is approved by the trustees, and this resolution seeks the meeting to record the receipt of the financial statements for the year. So, Resolution 2, that the annual report, including the audited financial statements of the trust for the year ended 30th of June 2019, be received. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Murray Holmes, Brian Leach, thank you. Is there any discussion? Nothing coming through. Could you all please mark your voting papers to vote on Resolution 2 and those online to vote accordingly via the Lumi app? Right, we'll move on to Resolution 3. In 2019, Eastpack changed its auditor to KPMG. The 2019 EET financial statements were audited by Baker Tilly Staples Rodway, and to maintain consistency of auditor, the trustees have agreed to change the EET auditor also to KPMG. This resolution seeks the meeting to record the appointment of KPMG for the current year and authorise the trustees to fix KPMG's remuneration. The resolution therefore is that the meeting record the appointment of KPMG as the auditor of the trust for the financial year ending 30 June 2020 pursuant, and authorise the trustees to fix KPMG's remuneration. I will now ask for a mover and a seconder for resolution 3. Mike Smith, thank you. Jenny Natush, thank you. Is there any discussion? Could you all please mark your voting papers to vote on resolution 3, and those online to vote accordingly via the Lumi app? Thank you. This brings an end to the formal resolutions for the EET meeting. In order for Computershare to commence collating the votes, can I now ask you to all sign your voting papers? Signing is required to confirm the validity of the voting paper. Those using Lumi to join the meeting will have their votes recorded and counted automatically. I will now ask that the voting papers be collected. As mentioned earlier, votes will be counted after the conclusion of the meeting. This now brings us to general business of the EET annual meeting, which is the opportunity for beneficiaries to raise any matter that may be of interest to the collective body of our growers and beneficiaries. We are also keen to get feedback from our beneficiaries on the format of this meeting and what you would like to hear from the forum. You're welcome to raise any points now or make contact with myself or Eastpack's company administrator with your feedback. Are there any items of general business? Yes. Just wait for microphone.
Just wondering whether or not the directors or yourself have had any thoughts on becoming Eurofins Mark II.
I'll let John take that one.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tarnished brand. So we're quite keen to look, at the end of the day, the services that were provided by Eurofins are fundamental to the way the industry operates and to delivering a high quality product to the market and sustaining a premium. We have decided that we will pitch for the roles so that we either we will be involved or someone better than us, and minimum standards will be met.
Is there anything else anyone would like to raise? Right. In that case, thank you, and I will hand back to John to conclude the meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Look, I'd like to thank all the shareholders for your attendance at this evening's meeting. Shareholders are the fundamental part of corporate governance. You choose your representatives and you hold us to account. Governance is often weakest where shareholders fail to show interest and where they do not feel empowered to demand the best from their boards and management. The annual meeting has been and always will be your forum where you exercise the overriding power at Eastpack. Please remember that, treasure that. It is one of the things that keeps Eastpack special. So thank you again for turning up again. I wish you all well for the coming growing season, for the remaining journey of your fruit to consumers this year, and for your lives generally. Now, declare the meeting closed, and the bar will be open next door for a drink or three.